Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this 12th and final episode of Chess Mistakes of an A Player. In this last video, I'm going to do kind of a wrap-up and talk about all of the mistakes in general terms and some lessons learned, things like that. So anyway, if you're looking for specific tactics or blunders, you'll have to go back and look at episodes 1 through 11, because this is going to be talking about more general concepts and not the specific errors that I made. So here to start this off with, this is the rating graph, my rating graph as it was at the time I started the video, started the series. So you can see it started sometime back in March or maybe April. I forget exactly when. But this was my tournament history up to that point and for the previous 2.5 years. And you see I was a pretty solid A player for a while, and then towards the end, this was the part that was starting to concern me. I had this streak here of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 tournaments where I actually lost rating points every tournament. So that's the kind of trend you would like to reverse. You can see there are like these little mini trends on the graph. Like here's 3 tournaments in a row where I improved. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row where I improved. Here's a couple where I declined. But long streaks like that are a bit unusual, and so I wanted to check it out, see if there was something really wrong with my game. Of course, previous to this, I had worked my way up from Class C to Class B to Class A, and I seem to have kind of plateaued in Class A. So maybe a secondary point would be to try and if I can figure out what to improve about my game. Maybe I can make it all the way to the next level, which is expert. That would be a nice goal to shoot for. So before we go on with the video, I wanted to update the rating graph. Since then, I've continued to play in tournaments, and so let's bring up the new graph. And you see the old graph ended about here. Yeah, that's March date. And then since then, I played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more tournaments, and my rating, went up and down a bit, and then started to improve around here. So I've gotten back into the range where I think it's probably a fair assessment of my rating. Twice I dipped back into Class B, so I was happy to eventually climb out of that. And I wanted to present this first because I wanted to make sure you understand I'm not claiming that this improvement has anything to do with the videos that I made. I just think, I continued playing and I'm just doing the stuff I normally do. Maybe I was a little more careful because it seemed like there was a few tournaments in there where I was blundering pretty badly, and just got my rating back to this range. So I am going to go on in this video and talk about lessons learned and things I might do to improve it, but I haven't necessarily applied those lessons yet, and I don't want to claim that this improvement is a result of anything that I may have learned from the videos. That's why I wanted to present this first, so just you can see what's happened since then. The other point I wanted to make about ratings while I'm here is, I mentioned it might be nice to make expert, but I'm not going to be particularly upset if that never happens. I'm playing chess for fun, and as long as I'm enjoying it and having a good time, I'm going to keep playing, regardless of what my rating is. Even if I get knocked down to Class B again, I will still keep playing, as long as I'm having fun. For example, I noticed I was listening to a video of Chess Explained recently, and he said that he recommends to all his students that they do half an hour of tactics a day and tactics training. And I don't do that, and I'm not sure. I might try it just to see if I like it. But if that turns out to be not that much fun to spend a half an hour every day doing tactics training, I probably won't keep up with it. Basically, I do some tactics training. I'll talk about that later. But I don't want to do so much that I get bored with it or tired of it. I want to keep it a fun activity. So that's my plan, and I'll be happy with however things turn out with my rating. So let's go on to the next topic. That was the actual mistakes. So I put up this chart somewhere in the middle of the series, looking at the kind of the mistakes so far and how they categorized. And let's talk about this one a little bit. I noticed that relatively few of them were in the opening. Most of them were in the middle game, which is what I was expecting, and a little bit surprised that so many of them happened in the end game. The reason is that when I count something as a mistake, I'm not talking about little missteps, but I'm talking about mistakes that actually would change the outcome of the game, would change it from being drawn to losing, or from winning to being drawn, that kind of thing. And so it's kind of surprising, because I thought, well, most games would probably be decided in the middle game. So if I'm already lost in the middle game, and then I go on to lose the end game, I'm not going to count that as a mistake, even if I make a move, that loses quicker or whatever. That's really the middle game mistake that put me into the lost position. So these end game mistakes are cases where I had a drawn position that I lost, or I made a mistake that would have lost, or I had a winning position and I made a move that would have or could have caused a draw or a loss. So it's kind of surprising that so many of them happened in the end game. That's perhaps a lesson for me, and one area I might want to focus my future studies on. And between strategic and tactical, I classified the mistakes. Tactical mistakes are simple blunders or more complicated miscalculations, but they generally have to do with a particular sequence of moves that leads to a loss of material or a bad position. Whereas a strategic mistake is a move that leaves you in a bad position right away, even if it doesn't imply an immediate loss of material, or a move that gives up in a good position or creates a bad position for you. I was kind of surprised there were so many strategic mistakes, because chess is 99% tactics, as the saying goes. So it's interesting that I was able to find so many mistakes that I was able to classify as strategic. So those are two areas that maybe I really ought to think more about in my games, those in-game mistakes and those strategic mistakes. And let's see. I classified a certain number of mistakes as process mistakes. And those are, just simple blunders, just not doing a blunder check or a tactical scan. And we'll return to this topic. But first, let's update the chart. So I ran the numbers again. So in all of the games that I looked at for these videos, there was 117 games in total. There was 180 mistakes. So that's 1.5 mistakes per game. So that's quite a few, considering that one mistake is enough to determine the outcome. What this means is that my opponents didn't always catch my mistakes, and so that gave me the opportunity to make further mistakes in the same game. Now, one kind of shocking statistic is that these simple blunders, these are, tactics that I could pick up just by doing a simple tactical scan or a blunder check, something that would take a few seconds per move, just to look for the obvious blunders, hanging pieces, forks, checks, forks and double attacks and things like that. There were a third, 30% of the games you might think of that have a blunder like that. Although that's not quite accurate, because more than one blunder might occur in the same game. But basically, there were 40 blunders out of 117 games, which is a pretty high number. So that's also an area that I probably should work on. And we did see, I think it was in video number 10, there was a period where I made some really simple mistakes that were pretty horrible. So that's one point. So let's go back to the numbers up here, though. Start from the top. So the opening mistakes, it increased a little bit to 8% when I concluded the whole set, but still quite a small number. Most of them mistakes are still in the middle game. The end game percentage declined a bit, but it's still up at there 29%. So almost 30% of the games make it to the end game, where I still have a chance to save the game or even win the game, and I somehow managed to turn it around. So clearly the end game mistakes are an important point to concentrate on. The strategic you might wonder why I'm not saying so much about the middle game mistakes. If the middle game mistakes, that's where the game is the most complicated. So that's really where I'd expect. If I'm going to make mistakes at all, that's probably the most difficult area to prevent the mistakes in. That's where the tactics are the deepest. Your calculation has to be the most precise. And although, it turns out looking at end games, there's a lot of calculation in end games as well. But what I'm saying is I'm not surprised to see that percentage-wise most of my mistakes end up here, and what I am surprised by is that I have so many end-game mistakes, and also strategic mistakes. I'm surprised there are so many, because a lot of times strategic mistakes can be identified just on general concerns. Am I giving up open files? Am I creating a bad pawn structure? Just the usual things you look at. You could maybe identify these mistakes and eliminate them without having to spend a lot of time in deep calculation. Whereas tactical mistakes, particularly ones that involve miscalculations, those are going to be difficult to eliminate. Although, in my own practice and what I work on, I am trying to find ways to try and improve my ability to calculate. I think that's an important part of improving your chess. Now, the tactical mistakes I broke down into two categories. I don't know if this matters a whole lot. I just thought it was kind of interesting. So a missed chance is a tactical mistake where I have a really good move, a move maybe that wins the game, and I didn't spot it, so I don't play it. Whereas a bad move is the other kind of tactical mistake. I make a move, I think it's okay, and it turns out that there's some kind of flaw in it. And so it's about two-thirds. About two-thirds of the mistakes are, that kind of miscalculation where I just make a bad move and I don't spot what's wrong with it. And about one-third of them are a missed opportunity where I had a chance to play a good move and I didn't spot it. Also, the breakdown between strategic and tactical, it seems like about a quarter of my mistakes are strategic and 3/4 are tactical. And then the last category, this is a subcategory of the tactical mistakes. How many of those were simple blunders? So 40 of them out of 117 games. This is kind of a shocking statistic in a way, that out of 117 games, I would have 40 blunders where they're just simple things that by looking at it for a few seconds, I could have spotted it and avoided that. I mean, if those were evenly distributed over the games, that's like a third of the games I could have improved my results just by doing a simple blunder check. Now, that's not quite correct because there could be more than one blunder within a single game, but still that's quite a high ratio. And then overall, there were 1.5 mistakes per game. So what this means is my opponents are giving me multiple chances, right? I make a mistake that could lose the game, but they don't spot it all the time. And so I go on to make more mistakes. So that's the statistics. And if I were to summarize the lessons from this, one is, I need to work on my process to eliminate blunders. I can always use some tactical strengthening. The ability to calculate better would help. But also that my end game and my strategic thinking maybe could use some work as well. So that's my sort of high-level conclusions from this. There was, some other points I wanted to make about the mistakes before I go on and talk about the process. I didn't include this in the chart, but let's go back to the rating graph. Let's see if I can bring that graph up here again. When I was looking at my games, first of all, I looked at all the games, and then I looked at the games that were just in this period where my rating was declining. And, I was trying to identify the cause for that period of time where it was declining. And I was thinking, well, one possibility was that it seemed like I was playing more stronger and higher rated players during this period. And, they changed some of the rating classifications in the chess club where I play regularly. So the top level is 1800 and up, and the bottom, there are two categories in most of the tournaments, the upper category and the lower category. And in the upper category is 1800 and above, and below that, in the next category down, it was 1800 and below. So I was near the bottom of that category, which meant that lots of my games involved playing stronger players, and that can have a negative effect on your rating. So I tried to look at that and see if there was any statistic that supported that theory. So during this period of time, say from this tournament to this tournament, where my rating was more or less stable, I was playing up about 45% of the time. That means in 45% of my games, I was playing a higher rated player, and in 55% of the games, I was playing a lower rated player. And in a Swiss system tournament, you would expect it to kind of average out. So 50% is probably typical. And then in this period of time where my rating was going down, it was reversed. Actually, 55% of the time I was playing a higher rated player, and 45% of the time I was playing a lower rated player. So maybe there's a little bit of support for that theory that my rating was going down to a certain extent because I was playing stronger players. But there's not. That's kind of a small swing. I would say going from 45 to 55% is pretty small, and so I don't really think that's the main effect. When I looked at the actual mistakes, it just seemed like it was a combination of things. There was that one period, I think it was in video number 10, where I really just played badly and lost like 6 games in a row, and a couple of them were from really horrible, simple blunders. And then there was the period after that where it was episode 11. I lost another 6 games in that episode as well, out of 11. So that's a pretty high loss ratio. And in that, those losses were better played. I was playing better, but I lost some games to some higher rated players in there. So maybe there's a combination of effects. Just a kind of a perfect storm of different things coming together to kind of knock my rating down, and also the fact that it kind of corrected by itself without me doing a whole lot, seems to indicate this was kind of just an unusually long streak of bad luck with a spell of maybe absent-mindedness in between. One thing about chess is your chess playing can be affected by other things going on in your life, but I don't know if anything in particular was going on to distract me at those times. I just just wasn't paying attention. So it's kind of a reminder, I guess, that I need to, if I want to keep my rating up, I need to come into each game with a certain amount of focus. And so maybe that's how I improved, was just restoring my focus a little bit. Okay, so that's it. That's it for the discussion of the mistakes and the lessons learned. Let's talk about the process. So the one of those areas that I wanted to improve in was in spotting those simple mistakes that I could fix, and just in a fairly easy fashion, and not make so many of those. That should at least provide some simple boost. So I came up with this decision-making process. I've worked on this a little bit, I think, since the last time I presented it, but it's just 4 steps. As I mentioned before, I've heard many other decision-making processes, and some of them are as long as a dozen steps, this, that, and the other thing. I tried to kind of streamline it down to 4 steps. So step 1 is to do a tactical survey of the position. Step 2 is to identify your candidate moves, potential moves you might make. Third step is to choose the best move. And the 4th step is to, before you make the move, perform one last blunder check. So let's talk about this in detail. In your tactical survey, what you can do is you can key off your opponent's last move. That's one way to start, because his moves are going to, they may be intended to set up a tactic of some kind or another. So that's the first place you should focus, is what did his last move threaten. But also, his last move may have created a tactical opportunity for you. So, look at that weakness of the last move kind of thing that King's Crusher likes to talk about. What did his last move, create in terms of opportunities for you? Are there any squares that are left unguarded, pieces that are hanging, that kind of thing? And then go on to more general concerns. So look across the whole board. What are your threats? What are your opponent's threats? Try and figure out what are all the tactics on the board. And this should be fairly quick. This is not a big deal, but you should be able to spot, just pretend like you're taking a little tactics, timed tactics quiz, and spend a few seconds, depending on how long a game you have, taking a look at all of these threats and seeing if you can figure out if there's any tactics in the position. Second step, and this is where you spend a lot of time, second and third steps are really the heart of your decision-making process. Identify the candidate moves. If you have a plan in mind already, then moves that further your plan. You can look at what your opponent's plan is and find moves that, if you have an idea of what he's planning, keying off his last move sometimes, he may be planning something. You can play moves that will frustrate it. So, moves that block your opponent's plans are also candidate moves. And of course, any moves that come up from the tactical survey, those are going to be candidate moves as well. In fact, if you have, you can short circuit this. If you have if you find a tactical move that is a forced mate in 3, you can skip steps 2, 3, and 4 and just play it. But for the most part, this is like a normal process. So some of those tactical ideas maybe are interesting to play, but they may not help your plan. So, that comes into choosing the best move. But I just wanted to mention tactical moves from the first part go into your candidate move list, and other moves on the list should be moves that further your plan, moves that block your opponent's plan. And if you can't figure out any particular plans, you can just try to improve your position. Look at moves that gain a little space, activate your pieces, improve your king safety, that kind of thing. So when you have some moves in mind, then you need to think about those moves. This is step 3, and try and find the best one. And what I wanted to mention, this is my original contribution here. I have something called the rule of 2, and this applies particularly in tactics. If you have a knight move, for example, that threatens a piece, say you want to chase his queen away with a knight move, or you want to deliver a check with a knight move, there's almost always 2 moves with the knight that will threaten the queen or deliver the check, whatever your threat is that you want to make. And so you should really look at both of them because one of them may have some hidden benefits. One of those 2 moves may be much, much more powerful than the other. And it doesn't just happen with knights. It happens with bishops. For a bishop to go from one square to another, to move the bishop to attack a second square of the same color as the bishop, has 2 ways to get there. It's 2 sides of the diamond. And it also happens with rooks. The rook to attack, to go from one square and attack another square, it's got 2 ways to get there. There's 2 sides of the rectangle between the 2 squares. Now, if you have a piece like a queen you're thinking of moving, it's the rule of many more than 2. There's lots of moves to look at with the queen, but the rule of 2 is kind of a shorthand, to make sure you look at both moves and choose the best one. So, it can be hard to make this decision, particularly when you're choosing between different kinds of moves. So, for example, you may have some strategic move that improves the plan, that forwards the plan that you have, or frustrates your opponent's plan. And you may also have some tactical move you can make that looks like it might win material. And so that's when you have to calculate. And you compare the tactical move by calculating as far ahead as you can. If it actually does win material, you also have to visualize the resulting position and make sure you're still in a playable position that you'll be able to consolidate. And so sometimes, just because you see a tactic doesn't mean you should play it. Even if it turns out to be playable, it may leave you in a slightly worse position or give your opponent some initiative. Sometimes it's simpler to not play the tactic, but just continue with whatever your strategy is. So that's where your judgment comes in, and that's where you spend a lot of your time. And then after you've decided on the move, then you go to step 4, and that's the blunder check. And this is where also I have made a lot of mistakes. But you just visualize that move. Say, okay, I've chosen this move. I play that move in my head. And what is my opponent going to do in response? And in particular, what tactic does he have to refute that move? And you'll be surprised how often little tactics will pop up at that stage. Particularly if you've been thinking strategically, because these are kind of like 2 different parts of your brain. If you spend a lot of time thinking strategically, you can lose track of those little tactics. So that is that is it for the decision-making process. Let's see. I don't have a chart for this last thing I wanted to talk about. Let's just go back to go back to the rating chart. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is what I am doing and have been doing, and what things I might do to try and improve. Just trying to wrap this up. I wanted to start with the tactics. So here, let's go to this one. Since most of the mistakes I make are still tactical, it's in addition to eliminating these process errors, the simple blunders, which would be, this is kind of like the low-hanging fruit. It would be nice if I could improve my tactics, in particular my calculations, because it seems like in addition to just blundering, I also miscalculate a fair amount. So I do two things, and I will give pointers to these websites in the description below. I do tactics training on the Chess Tactics server, and this is a free server. It's completely free. There's not even ads or anything like that. No upgrades that are purchasable. It's all free, and it's timed. And the idea is to give you that kind of instant recognition of simple tactics. And I do that at least once a week, probably twice a week on average. And I do that in conjunction with making my videos. So I do a little tactics training before I start some of my Blitz games, to try and hopefully improve my play during the Blitz game. Try and wake up that part of the brain that's doing that's tactically aware, so I don't blunder so much during the Blitz games. So I've kind of integrated that with my video making, and that's how I motivate it. But you can. It's kind of fun just to do these tactics online, and they're quick. You have to not be frustrated by the fact that you lose rating points if you're not fast enough, even if you get the right answer. That's the way their server is set up, and you just have to live with that. But it's to encourage you to be quick. Now, I wouldn't be so quick that I just play bad moves. I think you want to at least think about each one and try and get it right, but you also want to try and be quick at the same time. There's some kind of trade-off there, and see how well you can do. That's with the Chess Tactics server. And then there's another tactics trainer. The website is chesstempo.com. Like I said, I'll have links to these videos in the description. Chesstempo.com is a commercial service, but there is a free level, and I'm using the free level, and it's not timed. So the difference is when I do the tactics on the Chess Tempo server, what I do is I try and be as accurate and as correct and to calculate as deeply as possible. So I take all the time I need to try and spot the tactic and to try and calculate it as deeply as I can. And so what I'm practicing is I'm trying to improve my ability to calculate, which is hard to do. I don't get a lot of practice at that. You don't practice that really when you're playing a Blitz game. You're not really calculating very deeply compared to a slow game where you have minutes per move and 10 or 15 minutes for a really long move. So this is my opportunity to spend some time at a slower pace and try and calculate deeply. So it doesn't bother me at all to spend, like I said, 10 or 15 minutes on a single position in the Chess Tempo server and just try and calculate it all out and see if I can get the right answer. And by the way, I still, even taking all my time, I still get the wrong answer about a third of the time. So, obviously my calculation ability has a long way to improve. But so those are the two things I'm working on in terms of my tactics. In terms of the process errors, I try to remind myself during the game to do those tactical scans and those blunder checks, but I still forget that from time to time. I really have trouble following that process. So those are the areas that I have focused on so far, and I still need to think about what I can do to improve my end game and my strategic thinking. So those are areas for future study. I haven't got a plan for those, but I think I've identified those as areas, and if I come up with some nice way of studying the end game. The problem for me, of course, is that I shouldn't say of course. The problem for me is I don't like reading chess books that much. I have a couple books on the end game. Tried reading them, and I just find that really tough to do. The end game knowledge I was able to acquire, I got from Basic Chess Endings, but I haven't even read that book all the way through. I just it's kind of like a reference manual, so you can look up particular positions and find them. And so far, I've learned end games by looking at my own end games and trying to figure out or analyze them. Also, I watch videos on YouTube. Sometimes they're interesting videos on the end game. But maybe a more concerted effort of studying the end game might help me out. So maybe I'll make a video series about the end game and use some good end game book at some point. I have gained. I just will make this as an aside. I think it has helped me making these videos, particularly when I did the opening videos. When I do those opening videos, sometimes I pick up new opening ideas, and that can help my game in the long run. Although that's a double-edged sword. When you play a new opening, you often will lose some games at first, even if you pick up some new ideas. But there's a whole lot to learn about each new opening, and like the introductory videos that I do they're enough to get you in trouble. But you have to play the openings for a while before you discover all the nuances and all the different tricks that your opponents have. It's just too much to include in a simple video to give you all that, and you wouldn't remember it anyway. But you have to get out there and play those openings. So when you try out new openings, when you try out new ideas, it's often the case that your rating will suffer for a bit until you've had time to really gain the experience with those openings. Okay, that wraps up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion, and I hope you guys can apply these lessons to your own games. I think the one last recommendation I would make before I exit here is that the way to improve your game is to look at your own games and determine where your own mistakes are. If you can find patterns, you don't have to be, you don't have to look at hundreds of games. You can just look at your last few games, or you can look at your games regularly and just kind of notice where are the areas where you make mistakes and lose points. This happened to me a couple of times as I was improving. There was one stage where I noticed I was just getting outplayed in the openings a lot of time, and that's where I spent some time studying the openings and trying to improve that. And then there was another period where I noticed that I was getting into endgames where I didn't know what was going on, the rook and pawn endgames in particular. I didn't know about the Philidor position and the Lucena position, and so I took the time to study and learn those. And so both of those made noticeable improvements to my game. So you've got to look at your own games, in some fashion or other, whatever works best for you. Look for patterns and see what are those areas where you could improve. What are the easiest ways for you to improve your game? You want to eliminate the most common mistakes first. So hope you guys enjoyed this series. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon.